Story 1, submitted by Daniel H. from Pine Creek, Montana. I was 12 the summer of '71, and Pine Creek was the kind of place where folks left their houses unlocked and pretended nothing bad ever happened. My parents bought a peeling white farmhouse on a rise above the creek. From my upstairs window, I could see the grain silos, the long foothills, and at night, the scattered orange porch lights that looked like embers floating in the dark. The first few weeks were slow and sticky with heat. My mom insisted we keep the windows open to pull in whatever breeze the mountains bothered to give us. At night, the air smelled like dust, pine sap, and the faint sourness of the cattle pens miles off. I don't know when exactly I started waking at 3:33 a.m. every night. Same time, as if someone shook my shoulder. The clock glowed in that weak red way older clocks did, the numbers always a little blurred, and the moment my eyes opened, I'd hear something outside. Not walking, not scratching, more like dragging. A faint, deliberate slide over old wood. The first night I thought it was just a tree branch. We had plenty, and the wind was always clawing at them. But the dragging wasn't irregular like wind. It had rhythm, weight, a purpose that made my skin buzz. Night after night, 3:33 a.m., I heard it again, always on the far side of the house, near my bedroom wall. It sounded like something shifting its grip on the siding, testing it. My mind tried to place it. Raccoon? Cat? But no animal made a sound like hands. Slow, sticky, patient, groping up vertical wood. I didn't tell my parents. Back then, I was more afraid of being brushed off than of whatever was out there. Fear was a private thing, especially in a town where boys were expected to be tough. Around the 10th night, heat lightning rolled low across the valley. I woke exactly at 3:33 again. The room flashed, faintly with distant stormlight, and in that flicker, I saw the shadow on my wall. Not a branch, not an animal, a silhouette, tall and thin, rising higher as the dragging sound climbed toward my window. I froze so completely I thought I might suffocate. My ears throbbed. The dragging shifted into something wetter, almost like palms sliding on damp siding. I heard breath, shallow and quick, as though whatever it was had climbed far and was straining. And then came a sound I can still hear, even now at 62. A quiet, deliberate tap on the glass beside my bed. Just once, like a reminder that it knew I was awake. I don't remember getting under the covers. I just recall the weight of the blanket pressing over my head and the burning need not to move, not to breathe, not even to think loudly enough for it to notice. The air grew so hot I nearly fainted. But eventually the dragging reversed, descending slower, disappointed, until it scraped against the foundation and faded into the grass. That was the first time I felt it acknowledge me. The next day I walked the perimeter of the house. The siding was old, dusty, sun-bleached, but beneath my window, about 5 feet off the ground, were streaks, long, parallel dark lines, like something had scraped at the wood with wet fingers. I touched one. It smelled faintly of iron. My dad said it was rust from an old nail, but we both knew nails didn't move up and down. 2 nights later, the heat broke and rain came hard. The storm woke me before the thing did. My room flashed again and again, with lightning so bright it bleached the world white. The clock read 3:33. I prayed the rain would drown out everything, but the dragging came anyway, louder now, heavy, like something waterlogged, hauling itself upward. I sat up, trembling so badly the mattress creaked. My window was cracked an inch for air. That tiny inch felt like an open invitation. The dragging stopped just below the window. Then 2 fingers, long, pale, and wrong, slid into the gap. They curled, feeling the wood, tapping lightly as if testing the space. I couldn't scream. My voice died somewhere in my chest. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Lightning flashed again. In that strobing instant, a face appeared. not pressed fully to the glass, but near enough that I could see part of it. Skin sagging like wet paper, eyes too dark, too deep set, reflecting the stormlight like an animal's. It didn't look at the room. It looked at me. Its mouth moved, but no sound came through the rain. Just a slow shaping of something like a word, a name maybe. My name. I bolted from the bed so fast I slipped and slammed into the dresser. Pain shot through my arm, but adrenaline got me downstairs like a kicked deer. My parents woke to me screaming that someone was at the window. My dad went outside with a flashlight, furious, convinced it was some older kid messing with me. He found nothing, but the mud beneath my window was disturbed, deeply, as if something heavy had stood there, sinking almost a foot into the softened ground. He told me it was water erosion. Told me storms did that. Told me lots of things that weren't true. After that night, I slept downstairs on the sofa. The thing kept coming, but I only heard it distantly, like it was searching. Claws or fingers scraping spots on the siding farther and farther from my empty room, frustrated. The visits stopped after a week. We moved the following summer. Life went on. Almost. Normally. But here's what I've never told anyone. Last month, my sister mailed me a box of old family things she found while clearing our mother's attic. At the bottom was my old digital clock, the red numbered one from Pine Creek. Its cord was cut, dead. But when I lifted it from the box, the display flickered once, just long enough to show the time. 3:33 a.m., and on the plastic casing, faint but visible, were 4 long streaks, darker than the rest, as if something had dragged its fingers across it on its way to somewhere else. I haven't slept since. Story 2, submitted by Marla R. from Pine Creek, Montana. I was 19 in the fall of 1971, living at the edge of Pine Creek in a rust-colored trailer my father hauled onto a patch of leased land. Folks called that area the Flats, though there wasn't anything flat about it. The earth sloped just enough to make the trailer feel crooked, like it was always about to tip forward into the brush. Back then I worked nights at the Pine Creek Diner and walked home along a dirt service road lit only by the moon and whatever porch lights people forgot to switch off. I didn't mind the darkness. I grew up in it, the kind of dark that comes from a sky without city glow, where the stars look bright enough to warm your face. But starting in late September, the nights stopped feeling wide and peaceful. They felt watched. It began with the birds, dead ones, blackbirds mostly, some starlings. I'd find them scattered near the trailer steps at dawn, 6 one morning, 4 the next, always arranged in a sort of crescent pattern. My father thought it was the neighbor's cat until he realized the birds weren't torn up. They were just collapsed, like someone lifted them gently, placed them there, and let them die in a ring around the door. We burned the bodies, figuring disease. Didn't matter. The next morning, more appeared. The first night I started hearing the tapping was the night I decided to sleep with the window closed. Before that, I'd always left it cracked for the breeze. But that night the wind carried a smell like wet soil and something sweeter but rotten, like fruit that had burst on the ground and been left too long. The tapping was delicate, like a fingernail on thin metal. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Always in sets of 3. I told myself it was branches hitting the aluminum siding, even though no branches grew close enough. When the tapping grew louder, more insistent, I imagined raccoons. But raccoons don't climb aluminum walls, and they don't mimic rhythms. Then came the scratching. Slow, drawn-out scrapes from underneath the trailer floor. Not the skittering of mice, not the scramble of something small. This was a long, deliberate drag of something hard along the underside, tracing the length of the frame. I could feel the metal vibrate through the mattress. The next day, I crawled under the trailer with a flashlight. I expected to find claw marks, maybe some burrow. Instead, I found nothing but undisturbed dust and a few spider webs trembling in the breeze. No sign of animals. No sign of anything. Still, the sounds came back the next night. And the next. I told my father. He shrugged it off. Nights out there make your ears invent things, he said. Sound travels weird in valleys. Maybe so. But sound doesn't usually follow you. One night, walking home from the diner, I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, but steady, keeping pace with mine. When I stopped, they stopped. When I turned, the road was empty except for the dust my boots had kicked up. I picked up speed. The footsteps did too. I ran the last half mile, heart thudding, the sensation of something inches behind me hot as breath on my neck. I didn't look back. I was afraid that if I did, I'd see someone matching my strides in the dark, crouched low, ready to climb. I slammed the trailer door behind me, locked it, and slid down the wall until my legs stopped trembling. For a moment, the silence came back. The normal kind, the safe kind. Then the tapping started again, right against the front door. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap. I didn't sleep that night. A week later, my father left for a 3-day job in Helena, and I stayed alone. I spent the first night at my friend Lorna's place. The second, I convinced myself I was being ridiculous and went home. That was the night I woke at 3:33 a.m., a detail I didn't even notice until much later, to the trailer rocking gently, like someone was climbing the exterior. Aluminum creaked, screws strained. I felt the weight of something shifting along the roof, dragging itself forward with slow, deliberate pulls. My breath hitched as dust rained from the ceiling vents. Then the rocking stopped. Silence. So complete I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. What came next was worse than the footsteps, worse than the tapping. A long inhale, directly above me. Not human, not animal. Wet, rattling, like lungs that had forgotten how to be lungs. I don't know how. Long I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling. When the exhale came, it was warm enough that I swear the air in the room shifted. I felt it on my skin. Something slid off the roof then, in a slow, scraping descent down the side of the trailer. I heard the metal groan under its weight, then a soft thud on the ground outside my window. I should have screamed. I should have run. But all I could do was listen as the thing, whatever shape it was, whatever size, began to climb again. This time up the wall. Toward my window. Tap, 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 tap. The glass vibrated. Then a thin, gray finger pressed against it from the outside. Not a smudge, not a shadow. A finger, and behind it, the faint outline of a face leaning forward, features distorted by the reflection. Just a blur of angles and hollows, and a mouth that moved like it was forming questions it didn't know how to ask. I bolted for the door, barefoot, shaking. I sprinted across the flats to Lorna's place, with the cold air tearing at my lungs. When she opened the door, I collapsed into her arms, sobbing so hard I tasted blood. By morning, whatever had come in the night was gone, but the marks remained. 4 long streaks dragged down the siding, deeper than any branch could make. I never went back to that trailer alone. In fact, we moved a month later. My father called it a fresh start. I called it survival. But here's what still unsettles me. 3 weeks ago, while cleaning out an old box from my attic, I found a tiny aluminum shard. The same rust-colored siding from that trailer in '71. Scratched across it, faint but unmistakable, were 3 taps. Tap, pause, tap, tap. And when I picked it up, the metal felt warm, like someone had been holding it, like someone still was. Story 3. Submitted by Richard Rick L. from Pine Creek, Montana. In 1971, Pine Creek was mostly wheat fields, low barns, and a single radio station that drifted in and out like it couldn't decide whether we deserved music. I lived in a small, split-level house on Buckhorn Road, just outside town. Back then, I worked maintenance for the county and took odd evening shifts repairing fences and irrigation lines. Good money for a 25-year-old with no plans. My nights were usually quiet, except for that fall, when something started moving through the fields around Buckhorn, flattening long channels of wheat in slow, sickle-shaped curves. People said it was elk, or maybe a drunk farmhand spinning a truck through the grain. But elk don't move in perfect arcs, and no truck leaves depressions shaped like handprints. And none of that explained the humming. The first night I heard it, I thought the radio tower was malfunctioning, a low, steady vibration, like a tuning fork pressed against bone. It drifted across the wheat and through the open windows of my house, so faint I thought it was imagination. But night after night, around 3:33 a.m., the sound returned, just under hearing, just wrong enough to make my teeth ache. I didn't sleep much. I'd sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold, palms sweating, waiting for the humming to stop. It never stopped all at once. Instead, it faded out like something was walking farther and farther away. That's how I started thinking of it. Footsteps made of sound. One evening in October, I was out by the irrigation ditch east of Buckhorn, clearing debris before the first frost. The sunset was one of those Montana ones that looked staged, violet clouds glowing like coals, the wheat brushing gold under the wind. Peaceful enough that for a while I forgot about the humming. Then I found the scarecrow. Except it wasn't a scarecrow. It stood maybe 40 yards out in the wheat, tall, taller than any person I'd met, its limbs too long and too straight. A sort of figure shaped like a man but lean like saplings bundled together. Its whole body was the color of dry straw except for the head, which looked wrong. Rounded, heavy, slumped to one side, like it was listening. I told myself it was a leftover harvest decoration someone set up and abandoned. But deep down, I knew no farmer in Pine Creek would waste good straw on something that eerie. I turned to leave, and that's when the wheat behind me rustled. Not wind. Wind moves in waves. This rustle moved in a line, quick and directed, heading straight toward me. I froze, shovel in hand. The sound stopped a few feet behind me. The air felt dense, charged, like right before lightning strikes. I heard breathing, faint, uneven, like something was trying to match the rhythm humans use but hadn't quite learned it. I spun around. Nothing there but wheat swaying gently. The scarecrow thing was gone. I don't remember walking home. I just remember locking the door behind me and shutting every curtain until the house looked blind. That night, the humming started earlier, around 3:20. I knew because I'd been staring at the clock, praying it wouldn't turn to 3:33. But it crept toward that time anyway, each minute, dragging like a weight across my chest. Then the furnace kicked on, or at least I thought it was the furnace. A gust of warm air flowed through the vents, carrying a scent like cut wheat left to rot. The humming deepened, thickened, filled the house like a second atmosphere. I stepped into the hallway, and the floor vibrated under my feet. Something moved beneath the boards, slow, heavy. I backed up into the bedroom, shut the door, and pressed my ear against it. Silence. Then a long, fibrous scrape from the other side, like something tall was dragging its shoulder along the wall as it walked. I forced myself to look out the window toward the fields. That's when I saw them. Multiple figures, not just one, rising up from the wheat. Tall, pale shapes with bending limbs and those slumped, listening heads. They moved without disturbing the stalks, sliding forward like the wheat parted around them instead of being pushed aside. They gathered around my house in a half circle. The humming grew so loud the glass vibrated. My vision pulsed with each wave of sound. I ducked beneath the sill and covered my ears, but it didn't matter. The noise felt inside me, like it was tunneling deeper. I don't remember fainting, but I must have, because I woke on the bedroom floor with sunlight leaking around the curtains. The humming was gone. The house was still. I thought maybe I'd dreamed it all, until I saw the footprints. All around my house, the wheat was flattened in long oval depressions, shaped vaguely like elongated feet. But the strangest part was the pattern, a circle, perfect and clean, as if something had stood shoulder to shoulder around the house, listening. I nearly packed and left that morning. Should have. But I was stubborn, and 25, and convinced the land was mine long enough to defend. The last night in Pine Creek cured me of that idea. I woke at 3:33 sharp, not to humming, to silence. a silence so absolute it felt like the world was holding its breath. Then a soft tapping came at the window. Not knuckles, not claws. Something flat, almost like an ear. I stayed very still as the tapping moved along the glass, searching. Then something pressed against it, a pale shape with ridges like veins, delicate as parchment, listening through the pane. The window bowed inward, just slightly, glass creaking. I didn't wait to see if it would break. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my keys, ran to the truck barefoot, and tore out of Pine Creek without even shutting the front door. I drove until the sun came up. By the time I reached Livingston, my hands were shaking so violently I could barely shift gears. I never went back. Sold the house site unseen. But here's the part I can't forget, the thing that keeps me awake 50 years later. Sometimes when the world gets very quiet, I hear that hum again. Not loud, not threatening, just faint enough to make my bones vibrate. Listening, as if something far out in the fields is still trying to find the rhythm of human breath. Story 4, submitted by Annie S. from Pine Creek, Montana. In 1971, my family lived on the outskirts of Pine Creek in a narrow A-frame house built by my grandfather. The place creaked in cold weather and sweated in the summer, but it was home. My room was in the loft, open to the rest of the house except for a half wall and a railing my father always promised to replace after he finished the fence. He never finished the fence. We didn't get many visitors that far out, but the ones we did always commented on the trees. Huge old cottonwoods that leaned in like eavesdroppers, their branches knotted with age. At night, those trees scraped the siding with sound like whispers learning how to speak. It started with the dogs. Every farm dog for miles went silent one week in late August. Not dead, just silent. They stopped barking, stopped growling, stopped even whining at night. Pine Creek felt muted, like someone had put a thick quilt over the whole town. My father said it was the heat that dogs get tired in late summer, but even he noticed how they avoided the trees, walking wide circles around them with their tails tucked. The second thing was the dust. Most dust in Pine Creek rolls in from the fields, brown and gritty. But this dust was white, bone white, drifting off the cottonwoods in little clouds whenever the wind blew. It clung to windowsills and gathered in the corners of our porch steps, soft as ash. My mother swept it daily, scowling, each time like the trees were mocking her. Then came the night I woke up at 3:33 a.m. I know the time because the kitchen clock, visible from the loft, glowed right across the open space. I remember blinking at it, confused. Then I heard the tapping, not on the walls, not on the windows, on the ceiling. Very soft at first, a polite knock, then another and another. Rhythmic, searching. I thought it was acorns, or maybe branches tossing in the wind. Except there was no wind. The air was so still the curtains hung like dead weight. The tapping grew slower, more deliberate. Whatever was above me was moving along the roofline, tracing the angles of the A-frame, heading toward the loft window. The house felt smaller by the second. I sat up in bed, every nerve alive. When the tapping reached the loft window, it stopped. The glass darkened, not like a cloud passing, but like something leaned over it and blocked the moonlight. A tall shadow, long-limbed, too thin to be a person, but shaped enough like one that my mind tried to finish the outline. I ducked beneath the covers. Childish, I know, but terror makes children of everyone. The roof moaned, wood shifting under weight. Then a long dragging sound traced the slope of the A-frame, something sliding downward, claws or fingers catching in the grain of the cedar shingles. I heard it land in the yard with a thud so soft it shouldn't have carried through the floorboards, but somehow did. Silence, then rustling near the trees. By morning I convinced myself I'd dreamed it, but when I stepped outside, the white dust coated the porch thick as frost, and embedded in it were prints, long, narrow impressions, 4 to a set, like fingers pressed into powder. I swept them away before my parents came out. The next night, I stayed awake deliberately. I told myself I wanted to confront it, whatever it was. Truthfully, I just didn't want to be caught sleeping. I watched the clock crawl toward 3:33. At 3:31, the house, shuddered, barely, like a breath had passed over it. Then everything went very, very still. At exactly 3:33, something began climbing the nearest cottonwood. The trunk groaned under its weight, bark splitting with little cracks. I couldn't see the creature clearly, only its silhouette against the moon, a spindly shape hugging the trunk, moving with unnatural grace. Up and up it went, until it reached a branch that angled toward the roof. Then it started across, hand over hand, or claw over. Claw. The branch dipped under it, but didn't break. When it reached the peak of the A-frame, it stopped. Tap, 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 directly above me. My parents slept downstairs, oblivious. I could hear my father snoring, a warm, ordinary sound that made the terror feel even sharper. I stood, trembling so badly the loft railing rattled. Step by step, I climbed out of bed and walked toward the window. The tapping was just inches above me now, separated only by a thin layer of cedar. I don't know why I opened the window. Curiosity, maybe, or the sick feeling that if I didn't acknowledge it, it would find another way in. The night air rushed in, cold and metallic. I leaned out slowly. Nothing, just moonlight on the trees, their branches drooping with that strange white dust. The roofline above me was empty. Then something shifted behind the chimney. A head, if you can call it that, tilted into view, pale, hairless, smooth like wet clay. No eyes that I could see, just hollows where eyes should have been, and beneath them, a mouth that ran too wide, stretching almost to where ears belonged. It didn't crawl toward me. It listened toward me, like it was sensing the heat of my breath. When it opened that wide mouth, the sound that came out wasn't a growl. It was an imitation of one, a perfect low dog's bark, but empty. Practice, not instinct. All those silent dogs, all those terrified animals avoiding the trees. It wasn't that the dogs were scared of something. It was that something was learning how to be them. I stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp in the loft. The crash echoed like gunfire. The creature jerked, startled, then scrambled backward across the roof with impossible speed. It vanished into the cottonwoods, the branches shaking long after it was gone. I woke my parents. They didn't believe me. My father checked the yard with his rifle, muttering that I needed to stop reading scary books. But that morning, he didn't have much to say. Because the porch, once again, was filled with that bone-white dust. And this time, the prints weren't just on the steps. They were on the door. 4 long streaks dragging down the wood, as though something had braced itself there, listening. We moved the following year. My parents always called it downsizing, but I know better. My father never finished the fence because he stopped walking near the trees after that night. Sometimes when I can't sleep and the house creaks just right, I think about how that thing imitated a bark, how close it came to getting it right, and how someday, somewhere, it might try a human voice next, maybe even mine.